Hi everybody, it's Kirsty from Lifting Consciousness here. Thank you for joining me on another bite-sized podcast session. Today I'm joined once again by my dear friend Amy, also known as Amos, from Rainbow Healing Services. So I'd like to just introduce Amy, if you'd like to tell the collective a bit about what you do, and then we'll jump right into the session today.
Yeah, of course. Hi everyone, it's nice to be here. Amy from Rainbow Healing Services, and as part of that, providing Reiki healing both in person and at a distance. I also teach Reiki, give crystal healing therapy sessions in person, and also intuitive readings. So really looking forward to our discussion today. Thank you.
Fabulous. And for those of you that follow the channel and you've seen our other podcast, bite-sized sessions, if you like, we've covered them on free will and divine timing, and the other one was about, is it acceptable to be an option in the context of love? So today, because we had some discussions in those podcasts and ego came up, so we thought it'd be really good to actually have a bit of a discussion around ego. That can be quite a triggering subject in itself. It's a good thing and a bad thing, in my personal opinion. Obviously, we'll dive right into it. But the ego, when you think of it in a good way, it's all about that sort of empowerment of self, isn't it? That confidence of self. I know who I am. This is my ego. This is who I am, my identity, etc. But I feel there's elements of where there could be lack of ego, where someone's maybe feeling not so confident because of fears, doubts, etc., self-limiting beliefs, or they could be to the other extreme, egotistical, overinflated ego, where they could act in a rather, what's the word to say, Amos? They can act out in a way that is, the behavior is not really acceptable. And that's not to say in an abusive way, but in a way of kind of cockiness, even chauvinistic, can't they?
Yes.
So it kind of, it made me think it's an interesting topic, certainly, because there's a good side to the ego, but I feel that a lot of people have had to go through some kind of growth and maybe acceptance when it comes to ego as well. How do you feel about it? How do you feel about ego, to use that as a term, and when you think of lack of ego versus overinflated ego?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, the ego as a whole, isn't it? Because I suppose I can view it quite negatively, because I think that's how a lot of people portray it, in terms of intuitive readings, that I've had in the past, when they have referred to people being stuck in their ego, which obviously in itself comes across as quite negative. It's only really in recent times that I've sort of learned to turn that on its head and think, exactly as you said, it can be representative of a lack of ego as well as an overinflated ego, which is what we tend to think of when we see it negatively, is that overinflated big-headedness, isn't it? But a lack of ego is far more that you feel you kind of want to reach out and help that person, alleviate those fears and those worries, and bring calm to their lives. So it's only really been recently that I've sort of seen it through that lens, really. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, it is to certainly delve into it. And I've written one of the questions down here, which is, can our ego prevent us from taking action? And that's obviously action in a variety of ways. But when you think about movement towards what you want, whether that's a job, a relationship, an experience that you want to undertake, the ego can almost hold us back.
Yeah,
I feel, and maybe it's more so of that lack of ego, but I think maybe the overinflated ego can also hold us back.
Yes,
in another way. So that was interesting to look at, whether it can actually prevent us from taking action, because prevent in itself is quite a negative word.
Yes, but I think it thinks it's a protective thing, isn't it? It's like, oh, my ego's keeping me safe because, for example, in terms of particularly of a relationship, if I'm not going to be taking the steps towards that relationship that I desire, as my throat chakra is going mad, we know why that is, don't we? Not from a personal level, but on another level.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can really sort of, just hold you there, because your mind's telling you, oh, it's keeping me safe from getting hurt. So therefore I'm just going to stay stuck in position. My feet are essentially stuck in the mud, and I'm not going to move towards what I really want, and actually what would probably really make me happy.
That's it, exactly, deep down underneath it all. At soul level, yeah, absolutely. And because that's kind of driven by self and the perception of the self about themselves at that moment in whatever way, do you think it can solely be on that, or do you feel that maybe external situations and other people can also have an impact on our ego?
Yeah, I think it can be both. So it can be very much, about the person, but it can be about obviously the situation that's going on in their lives. Again, thinking in terms of a relationship, oh, I can't take steps towards that person that I, perhaps like to, because I've got this going on, or I've got that going on, and always coming up with a reason. Again, another protective mechanism to stop myself from getting hurt potentially. But also in terms of our own ego, we've all got an ego, haven't we? And it can feel very wounded, because essentially it can lead us to feeling like we're a bit unwanted, really, if we don't sort of feel that person making any progress towards us. So it's an interesting one for sure.
It is, exactly. And that made me as well, just that connection between one person and another. And if somebody is experiencing, let's just say, some complications with their ego, to use it in that term, whether it is lack of ego, they're feeling a bit insecure about things, or the wounded ego, as you say, or on the other side, the overinflated ego, if their behavior is then impacting on another person's ego, it makes me think of those strong soulmate connections when you think of relationships. And dare I use the phrase of the divine masculine and divine feminine, but people that watch might be interested to know our perceptions on it, and how we feel. And again, it's just our opinions. This is just a discussion we're having, and people might resonate with it, might have your own views. But the twin flame concept of that strong soul connection, or even just that strong higher divine soulmate connection, there's a lot to be said actually about the roles in that, and the divine masculine and divine feminine, because of course we know, as many of you know, that we've got those qualities within us. We've got the masculine qualities, we've got the feminine qualities. And when the divine feminine steps into more of a masculine type energy, where she is taking action towards what she wants, she is using her confidence and her expression, as well as being nurturing with the feminine qualities, but taking the masculine qualities and a go-getter type attitude and approach. Sometimes that can wound the masculine, and I say wound, sounds quite dramatic, but it can have an impact on them, because of course they want to embody that masculine energy. They are the divine masculine. Equally, they need to balance the divine feminine qualities within, don't they, with the nurturing and the leading from the heart and all of that. So I thought that was just an interesting thing to touch on, because of course, if the feminine is being more of a go-getter, embodying the masculine approach and qualities within herself, and the masculine is a bit wounded, affected by it, keep wanting to say wounded, but it's that kind of thing, then they might actually act out through their ego. I hope that makes sense how I'm saying it. It feels like it just needed to kind of come out in a way, but how do you feel about that? Do you agree? Is it something, not going to resonate with everyone, of course, but
Yeah, I do agree. And I think, in turn, it's almost a divine feminine can almost feel tempted to hold herself back on her path, because she doesn't want that. If it is the case that the divine masculine's got a lack of ego, it's almost, well, she doesn't want him to feel even worse. because he feels like, oh, he's paling into the shadows, where she's taking these brave leaps forward into what, you know, she wants and what she wants to create in her life. And he can feel that on an energetic level, whether he's physically in her life or not. And it can make him even more stuck. And it's a really tough one to balance it out, really. But I think essentially we've all just not got to be afraid and just go for what we want in life. But it's almost kind of, if it is that lack of ego, you want to sort of almost shake them out of it and encourage them to be the same.
Yeah, of course, because it makes me think of the hermit energy, but maybe a bit too much of it, because it's almost, you can go within, you know, for too long, and then you sit in that place of fear, don't you, and doubt, which would only then contribute to the lack of ego feeling.
Yes.
Flipping onto the other side of it with the overinflated ego, and how that can manifest and how that can kind of come out, that can actually sever connections. Can't it? Because it's that it's a more, I'm trying to think of the word. I mean, this is typically Mercury retrograde here, because I am struggling to find the word. But there's almost a sense of that kind of behavior from an overinflated ego, or that feeling energetically, or however it comes across, can really sort of impact and sever a connection at the extreme.
Yes.
In a negative way, because it's kind of almost mirroring that, or it's impacting. I mean, you know what I'm trying to say, don't you? It's having that sort of impact on the other person,
of course,
who is actually okay in terms of ego, may have had to go through some development in terms of getting more confident, or, you know, whatever, or the balance within, and then to sort of almost receive that from somebody in that way can almost make you tempted to take a step back. I think, which you alluded to before about stepping back, because it's almost saying, oh, okay, I'm going to get that reaction, so maybe I don't want to pursue this anymore, because that's it's not really in alignment with who or what I thought you were. But also having the understanding that they are coming from a place of ego, and they have to go through that process. I'm sure you've mentioned it before about death of ego. That's funny, because a fly just flew right in front of my face then. Little nap.
And I think, I have, and I don't think the ego ever really dies. I think we'll always have a small element of it there to protect us and keep us safe. You know, we have to have a little bit of it, but it's about keeping it in check, isn't it? And that's right. You know, if people have got that kind of other end of the spectrum and it's overinflated, if there's someone they're connected to, all it's going to cause is that energetic repulsion. Particularly if it's a soul level connection, that's exactly what's going to happen, because the other person is going to be, oh, that's distasteful, I don't like that. Oh, keep away, kind of thing. And that is a tough one. It's a tough one to manage when that happens.
Do you think it can also be a bit of an energetic repulsion from the lack of ego, if you know, you connect with the lack of ego, but not on the same scale, obviously?
It's not the same feeling.
So I guess ultimately it's all about having the balance within ourselves, isn't it, of the masculine and feminine qualities, and balancing that out within ourselves, but being confident in who we are without being egotistical, or actually having self-worth issues. It'd be great to have that balance, and then ultimately that alignment is there within connections and situations. Don't know if you wanted to say anything more about ego generally, because as we know, you know, our sort of intention setting for these sessions are kind of bite-sized, because we know when we start talking about a topic such as this, it can go on for like a couple of hours. You know, where, you know, if you've got anything else that you feel is pertinent to the discussion with regards to.
I think it's only just what we said at the start, really, and that, you know, recognizing that ego itself is not a bad thing, but it's just keeping that check on it, isn't it? Keeping that check on your ego to make sure that it isn't too weak or too strong, that it is kind of that balance. And if your ego's balanced and in check, then you're all good, really, aren't you? But it's just, sadly, the actions of others around us at times can cause it to become out of balance.
Yeah. Here's another interesting one that just popped into my mind. Do you think individuals are aware when their ego is at one extreme or the other? Do you think they are aware, or
I think not? I'm going to go with no.
Yeah, because it makes me wonder if certain things from the universe, from the divine, from source, are presented to them, which then actually make them realize that, okay, I have been sitting in a bit of ego at either end, because, and I'm thinking more of the kind of overinflated ego, that there's making sense that there's nothing wrong with acting like that, when actually they might not be aware that it's all about the ego.
Not at the time. I mean, I suppose with the benefit of hindsight and reflection, they might be like, oh, I was a bit of a tool at that point. But they might not realize that at the time. No,
that's it. So balance and harmony is what it's all about, and as we know, it's a constant journey of growth, isn't it? And evolution of the self. But certainly, in terms of kind of anyone watching this, if you resonate with it and you want to go a bit deeper, or you want us to discuss in more depth anything to do with ego, or anything more to do with divine masculine, divine feminine, or any other topics, then just comment below, because it helps us see what the appetite is out there within the collective of topics, just to gain our insight into it. So in the meantime, Amy is available for, obviously, Reiki, as you mentioned, which is Reiki healing sessions as well as teaching, because you teach. Intuitive readings and crystal healing sessions. So her details will be in the description box below. Check her out. Oh, my throat's going as well now.
It's time to stop talking.
My throat chakra is going. So check her out, and my details are in the description box below. But until the next time, I really appreciate your support. Please like, share, subscribe, and we wish you well. So all the best.
Thank you. Take care all.